Welcome back to Monster Tamer, a 2D Pokemon-like RPG created Phaser 3. Previously, we started updating our game to have a new title scene. If you missed the previous videos, there'll be links in the video description to the source code up to this point, as well as complete source code for this video. There will also be a link to the previous videos if you'd like to catch up, so let's get started. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is we actually need to update our game object for our cursor to move if the player provides input. So to do this, we're going to go ahead and add our controls to our scene. So let's go ahead and add a new property. We're going to do controls. And for our type, this will just be our controls class. And then what we'll do is at the bottom of our create method, after our fade effects, we'll go ahead and do this controls equals new controls. And we'll go ahead and pass in our scene. And then what we'll need is we're going to need a way to keep track of which menu option is actually selected and what that value is. And then that way when the player actually selects it, we can transition to the appropriate scene. So let's go ahead and add a new property. And we're going to call this selected menu option. And what this is going to be one of our enum values for our menu. So what we'll do is let's make a new object to define these. We'll do const main menu options, and we're going to set this equal to an object.freeze. And let's go ahead and add in new game. We'll have continue, and we will have options. And now for our values for our object, these will just be the same values. And then we just need to go ahead in the type definition for our main menu options here. So if we jump over to our direction class, we can go ahead and copy our type def here. Let's go ahead and paste that above our menu options, and we'll create that here, and we'll update our reference. Then for our type here, our selected menu option is going to be our main menu options. And then what we'll do is in our create method, before we create our game objects, go ahead and set a default value. So we'll do this selected menu option is going to be equal to our main menu options, and we will do new game. All right, so in order to track our movement, we'll need our update method. All right, then so inside our update method, what we'll want to do is we'll want to check to see if one of our arrow keys was pressed. So let's jump over to our battle scene real quick. And in our update method here, let's copy our logic for where we check for one of our arrow keys is pressed. And then with our wrapper to make sure that a key was actually pressed. And if one was pressed, we're going to go ahead and call the new method. And so for our new method, we're just going to call this move menu select cursor. And then we'll go ahead and pass in our selected direction. And let's go ahead and define this new method. So on this new method, we'll have our direction. And then what we'll want to do is let's go ahead and add our type definition real quick. And so for this method, we'll return nothing. And then for our only parameter, we'll expect our direction. And then what we can do is we can go ahead and update our game object's position and the currently selected option. So we'll go ahead and add in our switch statement. And for our switch statement, we'll do this, our selected menu option. And then we'll go ahead and add our various cases. So we'll have main menu options. We're going to have new game. We'll have case main menu options. We'll have continue. And then case main menu options. And we'll have options. And then we'll have our default. And with our default, we'll use our exhaustive guard with our selected menu option. And then let's go ahead and just add in our break statements to each of our cases. And then what we'll want to do here is we're going to want to update our game object's position. So we're going to go ahead and do our cursor. So we'll have this, our main menu cursor facing image game object. And we only need to update our Y value. So for our Y value, we're going to be at 41 if it's at the top. And then what we'll do is we're just going to copy and paste that a few times, and let's update our position. So we're going to increment by 50, so we'll have 91, and then we'll have 141. And then real quick, because we're referencing 41 in multiple spots, let's go ahead and update our player input position here. So our Y value will have 41, and then we can go ahead and update that reference. So let's just copy this when we create our cursor. And then likewise down here, we'll go ahead and place in our Y position. All right, and so what we're doing here is we're just updating the position of our game object, and now we actually need to add logic to update the actual selected option. So we're going to make a new method to go ahead and do this. So we'll do this, and we're going to do update selected menu option from input. And inside here, we're going to go ahead and pass in our direction. Let's go ahead and add that new method. So we'll have our private method. We're going to expect direction. And we're going to have our same JS.comments. So we'll go ahead and paste that. And then so inside here, we're going to want to check which arrow key was pressed and then go ahead and update our option accordingly. So what we'll do is let's add our switch statement and we'll switch on direction. And what we'll do is let's do case. We're going to do direction.up. Let's go ahead and add in a return statement. Then we'll do our case. We'll do direction.down. We'll add in a return statement. And then we'll have our other cases. So we'll have our direction left. And let's go ahead and just copy that. And we'll have right. And we'll have direction none. And so if it's one of our left, right, or none directions, we'll just go ahead and return and not update anything. And then finally, we're going to have our default, and we'll have our exhaustive guard with direction. So then what we want to do is if the up arrow key is pressed, we'll need to know which option is currently selected and then update accordingly. So what we'll do is we'll do an if statement, and we're going to do this. We'll have our selected menu option is going to be equal to our menu options, new game, and we'll go ahead and return. So if we're already at new game, we press up, we won't do anything. Our next case we'll want to do is if we're on continue, then we'll go ahead and move up to new game. So we're just going to copy this block of code here. And we're going to change this to continue. So if we're on continue, we'll do this. Our selected menu option is going to be equal to our menu options, new game. The only remaining option will be options. And so we'll just need to go ahead and go up. So we'll copy this line here. And we're going to assume we're on options. And we'll change this to continue. And then what we can do is let's copy this code here. And so if we're on down and we're already on options, then we don't do anything. If we are on continue, then we want to go up. We want to go ahead and go down to options. And then finally, the only remaining option will be new game. And so we'll just go down to continue. So we're just going to copy this, go ahead and paste it, and we'll go ahead and save. So now we should be able to go ahead and test our changes. And so if we press up and down, we can see our cursor moves accordingly. So one more change we're going to go ahead and do to our menu is we're going to go ahead and have our continue option be disabled by default. And what this represents is if we don't find any saved game data in our browser storage later, we're not going to enable this option and we'll make the player choose new game. Versus if we do find that data, then we'll have this option be enabled and they'll continue from where they left off. And so to go ahead and do that, we're going to need a property to keep track if it's enabled or not. So what we'll do is we're going to come to the top of our class. Let's go ahead and add in a new property. And we're going to call this is continue button enabled. And for our type, this is just going to be a Boolean. And then in our create method, we'll go ahead and add in a default value. So we'll do this is continue button enabled. And we're just going to go ahead and hard code this to false for the time being. And so when our button is disabled, what we want to do is when we navigate, we want to go ahead and skip that option. And we'll also want to grade this out a little bit so it looks like it can't be selected to the player. So what we'll do is on our continue text, we're just going to add an if statement and we're just going to check to see if our button is not enabled. So we'll go ahead and do the opposite. And then we'll go ahead and update our alpha if it's not enabled. And so we'll call set alpha. And we'll just go ahead and do 0.5. So now what should happen is our continue text is a little bit grayed out. And then later on, when we support it, we would enable or disable it accordingly. So then what we'll need to do is we're going to need to modify our logic before we update the selected option so we can skip it. So down in our update selected menu option from input, after we do our check for continue, we're just going to add one more if statement. So let's copy this and we're going to paste it. So what we want to do is we're going to check to see if options is currently selected. And if the button is not enabled, then what we'll actually want to do is we're going to jump all the way up to new game. And then if our button is enabled, then we'll go ahead and be able to have options go up to continue. And likewise, we're going to want to do that for when we go down. So let's copy this block of code here. And for this one, we're going to want to go ahead and check if we're on new game. If we are on new game and our button's not enabled, then we want to go ahead and jump down to options directly. So if we go ahead and save and we go ahead and test, now you'll see when we press up and down, we can only select those two options. And then to go ahead and test if the button's enabled, let's come up to our create method. We're just going to toggle this to true. And then what we should see is we should be able to select all of our options. All right, so the last thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to listen for input for selecting an option, and then we're going to go ahead and connect this to our scenes. So to go ahead and add that logic, let's come to our update method. And inside our update method, we're going to go ahead and add a check to see if the space key was pressed. So first what we'll do is let's add a safeguard, and we're going to do this, our controls, and we're going to check to see if the input's locked. If the input is locked, we're just going to go ahead and return early. Then we're going to add a variable, do const was space key pressed. Let's set equal to this, our controls, and then we'll do was space key pressed. And then we're going to add our if statement to check to see if that's true. And if it's true, we're going to go ahead and return early. And so when it's true, what we'll want to do is we're going to go ahead and fade out our camera, and we're going to go ahead and lock our input. So what we'll do is we'll do this, we'll do our camera, we're going to get our main camera, we'll call the fade out effect. And so we'll do fade out, and we're going to do 500 milliseconds, and we're going to just do black, so we'll do 000. And when we do this, we want to lock our input. So we'll do this controls dot lock input will equal to true. So now what we should be able to do in our scene is we hit the space key, we'll fade out, and now our scene's kind of locked. And what we'll want to do is we're going to want to listen for that fade out effect to finish, and when it does, we'll go ahead and transition to our other scene. So to do that, let's come up to our create method, and let's go to where we add in our fade effects. And so to know when our fade effect's done, we're going to need to add our event listener. So we're going to do this, we're going to do our cameras, we'll do main, and we'll do once, and we're going to do our phaser, cameras, our scene 2D, we'll do our events, and we're going to want the fade out complete event. And so when this event is fired from phaser, our event listener is going to trigger our callback. We'll want to check which option is currently selected in our menu, and then go ahead and start the appropriate scene. So what we'll do is we're going to do this. We need to grab our currently selected menu option. So we're going to do if it equals our main menu options, and we'll say new game. Then what we'll want to do is we'll do this scene.start, and we're going to call our world scene. So we'll do scene keys, and we're going to do world. And we'll go ahead and return early once we do that. And so then what we need to do is add our two other menu options. So we're going to copy that, paste it twice, and we'll change this to continue, and we're going to change this to options. And so for right now, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to leave these all pointed at our world scene, and then that way when we add our option scene, we'll connect to that. So if we come back to our game, let's go ahead and test. So we select options, our scene should fade out, and we should transition to our world scene. Likewise, new game, we'll do that as well. All right, with that actually brings this video to an end. In our next video, we're going to continue working on our title scene, and what we're going to do is we're going to add in our logic for using that 9slice method to go ahead and recreate our menu background here. And so with that 9slice method, we're going to go ahead and reuse that in a few of our scenes, like our options scene and in our menu in our world scene. So as a reminder, there's a link in the description of the video to the complete source code for this video. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking the video and hitting the bell icon to be notified when the next video in the series is released. For more great Phaser 3 content, please see the links on your screen now.